Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The ballroom gleamed like a private museum, gold chandeliers, tuxedos, and laughter that sounded expensive because it was practiced. A string quartet played something soft and elegant, the kind of music meant to be felt more than heard. Then a woman's voice sliced through the room, bright, cruel, impossible to miss. What a pathetic fool! Charlotte Windsor stood in a gold sequin gown that grabbed every light in the place and held it. Blonde hair twisted into a perfect knot. Diamond earrings catching sparks when she moved. In her right hand, a glass of red wine hovered like a threat she'd already decided to use. Marcus Reed had been mid-step, phone in hand, not looking for attention, just moving through the crowd with the quiet focus of someone who didn't need to announce himself. Charlotte stepped in front of him anyway. The wine flew in a smooth arc and hit his chest, dark red blooming across his white shirt, soaking into the lapel of his navy suit. The impact was soft. The humiliation was not. For half a second, the entire room froze. Then phones came up, one after another. Not to help. Not to stop it. To capture it. Marcus didn't jerk back. He didn't curse. He looked down at the stain spreading slowly, as if time itself had decided to show everyone what disrespect looked like in real life. A drop slid off his cuff and tapped the marble floor, quiet, sharp, undeniable. Charlotte laughed, pointing at him like he was entertainment someone had ordered. "Do you even know where you are?" she said loudly, so the whole room could share it. "This is a Windsor event. People like you don't just wander in and..." A few guests chuckled. A few pretended not to see. Most watched, hungry for drama that wouldn't cost them anything. A security guard angled toward Marcus, already wearing that familiar expression, eager, righteous, and wrong. Marcus lifted his phone to his ear as if the room wasn't erupting around him. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Marcus. On the line, someone spoke first, professional, careful. The voice of a person who lived in calendars, signatures, and billion-dollar consequences. Marcus listened. His eyes didn't lock onto Charlotte. They drifted past her, past the glitter, past the ego on display, like he was already standing in tomorrow. His voice stayed low. Calm enough to terrify anyone who understood what calm meant in that tone. "Stop the signing," he said. "Pull our $2.2 billion offer. Effective immediately." The security guard slowed, confused, not by the words, but by the certainty behind them. Charlotte's smile twitched. "Excuse me," she snapped, still trying to keep the room on her side. "Who are you talking to? You think you can?" Marcus lowered the phone. Red wine dripped from his sleeve onto the marble, each drop landing like a countdown. Across the room, a man in a charcoal suit, one of the event's sponsors, the kind with influence and a fragile sense of safety, went visibly pale. His gaze fixed on Marcus's face, not the stain. His lips parted. No sound at first. Then he whispered, barely audible, like saying it too loud might make it worse. "That's Marcus Reed." The whisper didn't stay a whisper. It moved through the ballroom like smoke, thin at first, then everywhere. One sponsor leaned into another. A woman in pearls lowered her phone half an inch. A man with a crest on his cufflinks stopped smiling as if someone had turned off the music in his head. That's Reed, someone breathed again, louder this time. Charlotte Windsor heard the name and scoffed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. Marcus Reed, she echoed, letting disbelief drip from every syllable. Sure. And I'm the Queen of England. She looked him up and down like she was scanning a receipt she planned to dispute. Dark suit. White shirt now ruined. No flashy entourage. No loud introduction. In her world, power came with noise assistants, photographers, men orbiting like moons. Marcus Reed came with silence. And Charlotte hated silence, because silence didn't ask for her permission. She'd ruled this night the way she ruled most rooms, by making people laugh when she laughed, by making them look away when she decided someone didn't deserve to be seen. The Windsor name was stitched into the building in invisible thread, donor plaques, legacy acknowledgments, the kind of respect you didn't earn so much as inherit. But lately, the Windsor shine had started to dull. Nobody toasted to it, but the people closest to Richard Windsor knew the family's empire was wobbling. Cash flow tightening. Lenders asking questions they used to save for private calls. A few ugly numbers that didn't care about pedigree. Their salvation wasn't philanthropy. It was a transaction. A $2.2 billion deal that would keep the Windsor machine breathing and make tomorrow's headlines sound like strength instead of desperation. And that deal wasn't waiting in some abstract future. It was scheduled for tonight. After the gala. Upstairs. In a private lounge with velvet curtains and discreet security. Papers already drafted. Signatures already rehearsed. The kind of signing where everyone pretends it's partnership, even when one side is throwing a lifeline and the other side is grabbing it with both hands. Windsor International was supposed to sign with Reed Capital. Marcus Reed. That was why he'd come alone. He hadn't needed a spotlight. He'd needed a temperature check. Because Marcus had learned something long before he ever wore suits like this: people reveal themselves quickest when they think you can't cost them anything. Earlier, when he arrived, the doorman's eyes had lingered too long on his skin, then his collar, then drifted away like Marcus had become a problem he didn't want to name. At the check-in table, a volunteer had smiled too brightly and said, "Deliveries go around back," before she'd even looked at the invitation. Marcus hadn't corrected her. Not because he couldn't. Because he wanted to see how deep the rot went. He moved through the room on purpose, watching who got welcomed, who got questioned, who got guided by the elbow like property. He listened to how last names opened doors, and how certain faces had to knock twice. By the time Charlotte crossed his path, Marcus already knew what kind of night this was. Charlotte, however, saw only what she wanted to see: a man who didn't perform his place the way she expected. A disruption walking through her kingdom without asking. So she tried to reduce him. Now, with the name spreading, the air turned brittle. People began to do that wealthy, delicate thing, rearranging themselves without admitting they were afraid. A sponsor near Charlotte swallowed hard. "Mrs. Windsor," he murmured, "it is him." Charlotte's laugh came again, but thinner this time. "That's impossible." Marcus didn't correct her. He didn't need to. He simply stood there, still, the wine drying dark against his shirt, while the room's certainty cracked around him. Then his phone buzzed. An incoming call. The screen lit up with a name that made Richard's assistant across the room go visibly pale as he noticed it from a distance. Richard Windsor. Marcus let it ring once. Twice. And when he answered, he didn't step away. He stayed in the center of their glittering world and let consequence arrive where everyone could hear it. Richard Windsor's voice came through the phone with polished urgency, too smooth for a man who was afraid. "Mr. Reed," he said, forcing warmth into every syllable. I'm hearing confusion downstairs. Where are you right now? Marcus didn't look away from Charlotte. He watched her the way you watch a match held too close to gasoline, quietly, precisely, already knowing the outcome. I'm in your ballroom, Marcus said. At your event. A beat of silence. Then Richard's tone tightened. Someone said there was an incident. I'm coming down. Please stay where you are. Charlotte leaned in, trying to catch every word. Her eyes weren't just angry anymore. They were calculating, hunting for the angle that could save her pride. You're on the phone with my husband, she snapped loud enough for the circle around them to widen. Give me that. Marcus didn't move the phone away from his ear. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't give her the satisfaction of a flinch. Richard heard her anyway. Charlotte, he said sharply. The first crack in his composure. What did you do? Charlotte's face twitched. For a split second, she looked like someone caught lying under bright light. Then she recovered, too quickly, too loudly. I did nothing, she said. This man, this nobody, bumped into me. He ruined my dress. He's making a scene. The lie landed in the room like a cheap perfume. Some guests inhaled it gratefully, relieved to have a story that required nothing of them. Others shifted, suddenly embarrassed to be standing so close. The security guard stepped in again, closer this time, emboldened by Charlotte's status and the old reflex of obeying wealth. Sir, the guard said, reaching toward Marcus's elbow, I'm going to need you to. A young server stood nearby, frozen with a tray of flutes in his hands. Eli. His eyes were wide, jaw tight, watching the guard's hand reach for Marcus like it had the right. Marcus turned his head slightly. Not toward the guard's face, toward the hand. Don't, he said. One word. Come. Final. The guard paused anyway, because something in Marcus's tone wasn't a request. It was a boundary. Charlotte clapped once, laughing as if boundaries were comedy. Oh, listen to him, she said. Acting important. You people always do that, walk in, puff your chest, and think you're owed respect. You people. The phrase didn't shock the room. That was the sick part. It just made a few guests glance away, as if looking would make them complicit. Eli swallowed hard. The tray trembled. On the phone, Richard's voice turned low and dangerous. Charlotte, he said, stop talking. Right now. Charlotte's smile hardened. Richard, don't, she began, but she didn't get to finish. Get away from him, Richard snapped. Do you understand me? Marcus finally spoke again, still even, still controlled. She poured wine on me, he said into the phone, as if reporting weather. In front of your donors. Your staff. Your cameras. The room tightened around that sentence. Because it wasn't just an accusation. It was a fact that dozens of recordings could verify in seconds. Charlotte's lips parted, then closed. Her eyes flicked to the phone still raised, still filming. She saw the evidence and hated it. The guard tried again, this time with more force, fingers closing around Marcus's arm. Eli stepped forward before he could think better of it. Sir, he didn't do anything, Eli blurted, voice thin but honest. She threw it on him. Everyone saw. Charlotte whipped around like a blade. Who asked you? She hissed. Go back to carrying drinks before you lose your job. The guard's grip tightened. Marcus didn't pull away. He let the contact exist long enough to make a point. Then he looked at the guard, directly, finally. Remove your hand, Marcus said. The guard felt it. The room felt it. the difference between a man who needs permission and a man who gives consequences. Richard's voice came through again, breathier now, moving fast. Mr. Reed, listen to me. I'm on my way down. Whatever happened, we can address it privately. We have a signing scheduled tonight. We don't need. Marcus cut in, not rude. Just absolute. The signing is over, he said. Your wife made that decision for you. Charlotte laughed again, but it sounded strained, like metal bending. You don't get to do that, she said. You don't get to punish my family because you got your feelings hurt. Marcus's eyes didn't change. The wine stain darkened as it dried. This isn't about my feelings, he said quietly. It's about your character. Somewhere beyond the circle of bodies, an elevator dinged. Heads turned. And Richard Windsor, pale and moving too quickly for a man in a tuxedo, stepped out into the ballroom as if he'd just run into a fire to save something priceless. Richard Windsor didn't walk into the ballroom. He cut into it, shoulders tight, eyes darting, tuxedo collar slightly crooked from rushing. The smile he wore was the kind men learned on yachts and in boardrooms, polite, unbreakable, practiced. It broke the moment he saw Marcus. The wine stain wasn't just on fabric. It was on the night. Richard stopped a few feet away, breathing through his nose as if oxygen itself had become expensive. Behind him, two assistants hovered, one clutching a phone, the other clutching panic. Mr. Reed, Richard said, voice low, urgent, trying to sound like a host instead of a man watching his empire wobble. I apologize. Whatever happened, we can step upstairs. Private lounge. No cameras. We handle this discreetly. Charlotte moved instantly, sliding to Richard's side like she belonged there by birthright. Richard, tell him to leave, she hissed, eyes still lit with humiliation and spite. He's turning this into a spectacle. Richard didn't look at her. Not at first. He stared at Marcus's chest, the dried red streaks, then at the ring of phones aimed like weapons. His gaze finally snapped to Charlotte with something colder than anger. Stop, he said through clenched teeth. Just stop. The room fell into a hush so complete the quartet seemed to fade on instinct. Even the guard's grip loosened, hand half lifted, unsure who he was supposed to obey now. Marcus didn't step back. He didn't step forward. He remained exactly where he was, center frame, like the room had rotated around him. You wanted it private, Marcus said, quiet enough to make people lean in. But she made it public. Richard swallowed. Mr. Reed, please. The signing. Marcus raised his phone again, not as a shield, but as a switch. Yes, he said into it. It's Reed. A pause. Then he spoke in short, clinical commands, words that sounded like a door locking from the inside. Have legal send the withdrawal notice. Tonight. Timestamp it. Pull the offer and halt the signing process. Notify our board chair. And call compliance, this needs to be documented as a conduct risk. Richard's face drained of color in stages, like the lights were dimming behind his eyes. One of Richard's assistants stared at Marcus's phone as if it was a detonator. The other began typing furiously, thumbs shaking. Charlotte's voice jumped an octave. He can't do that, she snapped, trying to reclaim the room with volume. You don't cancel a deal because of a drink. Marcus didn't look at her. He looked at Richard. You're right, Marcus said. You don't lose a deal over a drink. You lose it over what the drink revealed. Richard's mouth opened, then closed. His instincts fought each other, apology versus defense, pride versus survival. Mr. Reed, he tried again, softer now, the billionaire mask slipping. Name your terms. Whatever you want. donation, public statement. We can fix this. Marcus's phone buzzed a new alert. He glanced down once. Then he ended the call. The simple click sounded louder than the chandelier. At that exact moment, Richard's assistant stepped in close and whispered into his ear, barely moving his lips, like delivering bad news in church. "Sir, we just got the email. Reed Capital Counsel sent it. Subject line, withdrawal of offer effective immediately." Richard's eyes flicked shut for a fraction of a second, an involuntary flinch, like a man absorbing impact. Charlotte stared at him, confused, then furious. "Richard? What is he talking about?" Richard didn't answer her. He stared at Marcus as if he was seeing him for the first time, not a guest, not a target, not a man to manage. A decision maker. And the room, every donor, every sponsor, every opportunist with a phone, felt the shift. Because the gala had stopped being entertainment. It had become a courtroom. The ballroom didn't feel like a party anymore. It felt like a room full of people trying to decide which side of the story they wanted to be caught on. Richard Windsor stood a few feet from Marcus, tuxedo perfect except for the panic beneath it. He attempted a host's smile, the kind designed to calm donors and steady headlines. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, palms half raised, "this is a misunderstanding. Please, enjoy the evening. We'll address." His sentence died when his assistant edged close and whispered something that drained what color Richard had left. "Sir, legal confirmed. The withdrawal notice is delivered. Time stamped. It's done." Charlotte's head snapped toward Richard. "Tell him to stop," she hissed. "Tell him he can't do this." Richard didn't answer. He couldn't, not without admitting the truth. Marcus wasn't threatening. Marcus was acting. Across the room, the event director in a headset sprinted toward the stage, speaking quickly into her mic. She conferred with the MC, who glanced nervously at the sponsor screen behind the quartet like he just realized the night's script had changed. The MC cleared his throat, forcing brightness into his voice. "Thank you all for supporting tonight's cause," he said, smiling too hard. "We'd like to recognize our premier sponsor." The LED wall behind him flickered, cycling through glossy logos. Most people barely looked at first. Then a name slid onto the screen in crisp, clean letters. Reed Capital. Underneath, a CEO portrait filled the frame. Marcus Reed. Not the man in the wine-stained shirt. Not the target Charlotte had tried to turn into a joke. A polished headshot, calm gaze, city glass behind him, the kind of image investors trusted with their retirement and their reputations. A murmur tore through the room. "Oh my God. That's him. I didn't know he'd be here." Someone farther back whispered, "He's on 3 boards. He funds half the programs in this city." Phones that had been raised for entertainment now hovered uncertainly, as if their owners had finally understood the clip they were filming could include themselves. Charlotte stared at the screen, then at Marcus, then back at the screen like reality had betrayed her. "No," she said, almost breathless. "That's not." Richard's voice came out rougher now. "Charlotte," he muttered, "you need to stop." She turned on him, furious. "Stop? Don't you dare." Richard stepped closer to Marcus, lowering his voice in a last attempt at control. "Marcus," he said, dropping the formalities like they were deadweight, "let's go upstairs. We can fix this. Terms. Donation. Public statement. Whatever you want." Marcus didn't move. "You think this is about terms," Marcus said quietly. "It's about trust." Richard's jaw tightened. Thousands of jobs. And thousands of people watched your wife treat a human being like a stain, Marcus replied. That's your culture. That's your risk. Charlotte's face twisted, sequins catching light that now felt like a spotlight in a courtroom. This is my gala, she snapped. Turn that screen off. Throw him out. No one moved. The head of security stood frozen, suddenly aware that throw him out could become wrongful detention in a matter of seconds. And then the entrance doors opened again. Not with the rush of donors leaving, but with the steady, deliberate stride of people who didn't care about social standing, only documentation. Two men and a woman in dark suits stepped into the ballroom, scanning the room like they already knew where to stand. Legal. They weren't strangers to the night. Reed Capital's legal team had already been upstairs, on standby for the signing, drafts ready, red lines prepped, the kind of quiet machinery that made billion-dollar agreements look effortless. When Marcus's call came through, they didn't ask for details. They just moved. Now they walked into the ballroom with the calm precision of people trained to operate in rooms where pride was loud and liability was louder. The lead attorney, a woman in her 40s with a clean jaw-length cut and eyes like tempered glass, stopped beside Marcus as if taking her assigned place. Two colleagues flanked her, portfolios in hand, faces unreadable. She nodded once. Mr. Reed. Then she turned her attention to the security guard who still hovered too close. Sir, she said, voice flat and professional, step back. Do not touch my client again. The guard's eyes flicked to Richard for guidance. Richard gave none. The guard retreated. A small shift, but everyone felt it. Authority had changed hands without a speech. Richard tried to summon diplomacy like a shield. This is unnecessary, he said, forcing calm for the donors. We can handle this privately. With respect, Mr. Windsor, the second attorney replied, already opening his portfolio. Private ended the moment the incident happened in public. He produced a single page on heavy letterhead and held it at chest height, not for drama, just for clarity. Withdrawal of offer effective immediately. Richard's throat tightened. The lead attorney spoke, measured and surgical. Reed Capital hereby withdraws its $2.2 billion offer and terminates negotiations effective immediately. Any signing scheduled for tonight is cancelled. We are also issuing a formal preservation request. Charlotte lunged forward, voice shrill. You can't. The attorney didn't look at her. She didn't have to. Preserve all recordings, she continued. Hotel CCTV. Security logs. Incident reports. Any staff communications. Any guest recordings. This is a litigation hold. Phones around the circle lowered slightly, suddenly less like toys and more like evidence. Richard's voice cracked at the edges. Litigation, he repeated, as if saying it softly could make it smaller. Over a drink? Over conduct, the attorney corrected. Discriminatory treatment. Physical contact. Reputational harm. And business interference. We will evaluate claims and remedies accordingly. Charlotte laughed once, but it sounded broken. Physical contact? Oh, please. Marcus didn't answer her. He spoke quietly to his counsel instead. Document everything, he said. The hotel manager arrived, sweating through expensive fabric, apologies spilling out too quickly to be credible. We'll cooperate fully, the manager said. We'll provide footage, reports, whatever you need. You'll provide names, the attorney said. Witness list. Time stamps. Written accounts tonight. The head of security glanced at the guard who had grabbed Marcus earlier. The guard stared at the floor like it might open. Richard's assistant edged close, phone vibrating non-stop. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Sir, partners are texting. One lender requested an emergency call within the hour." Richard stared at the phone as if it was a verdict. Charlotte looked around for allies, friends, donors, anyone who would mirror her outrage. But the room was already rearranging itself away from her. A woman she'd toasted with earlier was suddenly checking on her driver. A man who'd laughed at Charlotte's insult was now studying his watch like time had become sacred. Richard stepped closer to Marcus, voice lowered into something almost pleading. "Marcus," he said, "don't do this. We can make it right. We can." Marcus met his gaze, steady and unblinking. "The mistake was thinking you could humiliate someone and still get rewarded for it," Marcus said. Another buzz. Another call. Richard's assistant leaned in, pale. "Sir, the board chair is calling. Right now." Richard stared at the ringing screen. And for the first time, the billionaire host looked like a man who finally understood what falling felt like. Richard Windsor took the phone from his assistant with fingers that didn't quite work right. "Hello," he said, forcing steadiness. His board chair didn't bother with pleasantries. Whatever was said on the other end made Richard's eyes lose focus for a second, like he was looking past the chandeliers and seeing headlines instead. He turned slightly away from the crowd, shoulders curving inward. "Yes," Richard murmured. "Yes, I understand. I'm handling it." Behind him, the ballroom kept moving, but differently now. Donors drifted toward exits in neat, embarrassed clusters. People who'd been laughing minutes ago were suddenly silent, scrolling, watching the same clip replay from a dozen angles. Charlotte stood in the center of it, sparkling and cornered. "This is insane," she snapped, voice cracking at the edges. "Richard, tell them to stop. Tell them you're the one in charge." Richard ended the call. He didn't look at her the way a husband looked at a wife. He looked at her the way a man looked at a fire he couldn't put out. "Charlotte," he said, low and urgent, "you need to be quiet." Her lips trembled with rage. "Don't you dare talk to me like..." "Now," he said, and the word carried a new kind of fear. The hotel manager arrived with the head of security, both pale and sweating through expensive fabric. They hovered near Marcus's attorneys, nodding too much, apologizing too fast, already drafting statements in their heads. "We're so sorry," the manager said. "We'll cooperate fully. We'll collect footage, file reports, whatever you need." Marcus watched them without warmth. The woman attorney spoke first. "We need names. Witness list. Time stamps. And we need your security staff's written accounts tonight." The head of security glanced toward the guard who'd grabbed Marcus earlier. The guard stared at the floor like it might open and swallow him. Richard stepped forward again, trying one last angle. He kept his voice soft, almost reasonable, as if decency could be negotiated. "Mr. Reed." "Marcus," he said, lowering the distance between them like that could lower the damage. "If my wife didn't understand who you were." Marcus's eyes sharpened at that. "Not angry. Just exact." He cut Richard off with a single sentence, quiet enough to force the room to lean in. "You knew I was a human being," Marcus said. "That should have been enough." The words landed heavier than any shouted accusation. They didn't just condemn Charlotte. They indicted the room. Richard swallowed, and for the first time, his voice lost its polish. "Please," he said, barely audible. "We can make this right. Donation. Partnership. Anything. Just don't destroy us. Charlotte jerked forward, desperate to reclaim her narrative. Destroy you, she spat. He's the one making threats. Over a stupid. Her sentence died when she noticed no one was nodding anymore. No one was laughing with her. A woman she considered a friend had already turned away, pretending not to know her. A man who'd flirted with her earlier was suddenly busy reading an email. Charlotte's face tightened, the glamour collapsing into panic. You're doing this because you want to humiliate me, she said to Marcus, voice trembling now. You want everyone to watch me fall. Marcus didn't answer her accusation. He looked past her, past the sequins, past the entitlement, to the young server still standing there with a trembling tray. Eli. Eli's eyes met Marcus's for a split second, startled, like he hadn't expected to be seen at all. Marcus's gaze lingered, thoughtful, and something inside the room shifted again, away from punishment and toward purpose. He turned slightly to his counsel. His voice was low, but his words were clean and deliberate. Get me the foundation director, he said. And find out that young man's name. The woman attorney nodded once, already moving. Charlotte watched, confused, then frightened, because she could feel it now. This wasn't just a deal being cancelled. This was power being redirected. The foundation director arrived breathless, clutching a tablet like it was a life raft. She wore a black dress and a headset, the kind of person who lived in logistics and public image, and right now both were on fire. Mr. Reed, she said, voice shaking with practiced professionalism. We're deeply sorry. This is not what we stand for. Marcus looked at her, steady. Then prove it. Around them, the ballroom had begun to thin. Not because people were bored, because they were afraid to be recorded standing on the wrong side of a moment that was already turning into a headline. The director nodded rapidly. Whatever you need. A statement, a refund, You're not refunding anything, Marcus said. You're redirecting it. She blinked. Redirecting? My sponsorship, he said, calm as a signature. Every dollar that was earmarked for tonight's showcase, move it into a new fund. Scholarships and training grants. Hospitality staff. Service workers. People who keep rooms like this running while people like them, his gaze flicked, briefly, toward Charlotte, pretend they're invisible. The director swallowed. We can do that. You will, Marcus said. And I want it announced. Not for applause. For accountability. His attorney stepped in smoothly, already drafting language. We'll need a memorandum of understanding. Funds to be administered with independent oversight. Clear criteria. Immediate disbursement schedule. The director nodded as if every word was a lifeline. Yes. Yes, of course. Marcus turned toward Eli. Eli's tray was gone now, set down somewhere in the chaos. His hands were empty, and he looked like he didn't know what to do with them. What's your name? Marcus asked. Eli's voice barely worked. Eli. Eli Carter. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a clean card, and held it out. Eli Carter, he repeated, as if anchoring it in the room. You spoke the truth when it was expensive. That matters. Eli stared at the card like it might vanish. He took it with careful fingers. My office will call, Marcus said. Interview for our operations scholarship program. And if you want it, paid internship. No favors. You'll earn it. But you'll get the door. Eli's eyes glassed over. He nodded once, hard, because speaking would break him. Behind them, Charlotte made a sound, small, strained, half laugh, half choke. She looked from Eli's card to Marcus's calm face, and something in her expression shifted from rage to a kind of horror. Because this wasn't the ending she understood. She understood humiliation. She understood revenge. She didn't understand power that could punish and build at the same time. Richard watched it happen as if watching his money change hands in real time. His phone buzzed again, then again, then again. He didn't even read the notifications now. His jaw worked like he was chewing glass. A donor approached the director with a tight smile. "I have an early morning," he said, already backing away. Another sponsor slipped out without saying goodbye. The room's loyalty was leaking, drop by drop, faster than the wine had. The hotel manager leaned toward the head of security, voice low and urgent. "Get that guard off the floor. Now. And bring me every camera angle from the last 30 minutes. The head of security nodded, swallowing hard, and began issuing orders like his career depended on speed. Charlotte stood alone in the center of the glitter, sequins catching light that no longer felt like attention, only exposure. On the big screen behind the stage, Marcus's CEO portrait still glowed, steady and unshaken. And somewhere outside the ballroom, the world was already replaying the clip. Not just the wine. The moment the power moved. By morning, the ballroom had emptied, but the damage hadn't. The clip traveled faster than any apology, Charlotte's arm swinging, red wine blooming across Marcus's chest, the room laughing, then the sudden silence that followed his calm instruction. News sites didn't call it a misunderstanding. Social media didn't call it a moment. It called it what it was, entitlement meeting consequences. Inside Windsor International, the first meeting of the day wasn't about strategy. It was about survival. Richard sat at the head of a long conference table that suddenly felt too large for him. Screens flickered with incoming emails, lenders requesting immediate calls, partners reassessing exposure, a board agenda that had been rewritten overnight. The Reed Capital withdrawal didn't just remove money. It removed confidence, the only currency a legacy empire could spend when the numbers started bleeding. When the board chair spoke, the voice was flat. "You brought reputational collapse into our core negotiation," the chair said. "We can't protect you from this." Richard's mouth opened, but no defense came out clean. He could still smell ballroom perfume in his tuxedo, like the night had followed him into daylight to testify. 2 hours later, a statement went public. Windsor International and the Windsor Foundation condemn discriminatory conduct and are cooperating with an internal review. The words were careful, lawyered, bloodless. No statement could unspill wine. At home, Charlotte paced through rooms designed to impress guests who no longer answered her calls. Invitations disappeared. Group chats went quiet. Friends who once laughed too loudly at her jokes now claimed busy schedules. Her name, once a passcode into private doors, became a liability people avoided saying out loud. When she confronted Richard, she expected rage aimed outward. Instead, she found a man staring at numbers he couldn't argue with. "You let them turn on me," she said, voice sharp with panic. Richard looked up slowly. His eyes were red, not from tears, he didn't have time for those, just from sleeplessness. "No," he said. "You turned on yourself. And you dragged us with you." Days later, the Gallus Foundation announced a new fund, scholarships, training grants, and paid pathways for service workers administered with independent oversight. A line item that used to polish reputations became something that built futures. Eli Carter received a call he didn't believe at first. Then an email. Then a schedule. It wasn't a miracle. It was access earned by one brave sentence spoken when fear was the easiest option. Marcus didn't give interviews. He didn't need to. He showed up once quietly at the foundation office to sign the final paperwork. Same calm. Same steady hands. No celebration, no victory lap. As he stood to leave, a staff member asked, carefully, "Mr. Reed, did you do all this to teach them a lesson?" Marcus paused at the door, glancing back at a building full of polished smiles and newly sharpened rules. "I didn't teach them," he said. "I revealed them." Then he stepped into the daylight, the kind that didn't flatter anyone, only exposed what was already true. And somewhere behind him, an empire built on appearances kept cracking, not because someone shouted, but because someone finally refused to be reduced.